Well, maybe you're like me and we're anticipating the Biden Trump debate and just watched it and wanted to give a theological analysis of what was going on there and what we as Christians should be thinking about in the coming months up to the election. One of the biggest questions I think that we can ask as Christians is really, how should my faith relate to the political sphere? There are some Christians who are more of the opinion that think that our faith should really be in more of a box, that we should not really interfere or the rest of our lives with our faith. And I'm just going to come out and give my position. I think that's just simply wrong. I think that if we are Christians, then our faith should affect every area of our lives, because Christ doesn't call us to simply be Christians at church or at home. He calls us to be Christians at work, at the mall, hanging out with our friends. He calls us to be Christians when we're using our money. He calls us to be Christians when we are thinking through moral issues. And so what I wanted to discuss in this, what I'm calling a kind of a quick reaction analysis of the debate, is how should Christians respond? How should we think? What are some of the moral issues involved? How do we think through morality in general? What are some of the ways that we can think through this? And then, can government really even legislate such things as morality? Well, as we're coming into the election, we need to be able to be thinking through all elections, through local and federal. We need to think Christianly, if I can make up a word, I guess an adverb. So our faith should really inform every area of our lives. And so how does that relate to the presidential debate and the election coming up and all that we're thinking through? Well, there are a lot of moral issues that as Christians and just as rational people, we should be thinking through and being aware of. And this is all going to relate to the overall question of faith and reason. How should faith relate to reason? How do these two spheres work together? And if you follow my channel, if you follow me and who I am and what my school teaches, Southern Evangelical Seminary, we believe that we should be intellectual Christians. In fact, one of my biggest gripes, I guess, to put it that way, with the church is that a lot of times we are taught biblical Christianity, maybe, but we don't really learn a lot in the churches about how to think properly and how to take our Christianity and apply that to the real world, not just in defending our own views, but defending our positions on other things as well, and to be able to think through moral issues and ethics. So what are the moral issues that we saw in the debate? Well, one definitely would be abortion. That would be the absolute top of my list in terms of the obvious moral issues, is regarding the issue of abortion. When does life begin? What does it mean to be alive, to be a person? What are the issues involved with abortion? So they were both asked the question of, what do you think about abortion? What are the limits? How do you think through these issues? What are the exceptions? And President Trump gave a response where he basically said he is against abortion, especially late-term abortion, with the exceptions of rape, incest, and the life of the mother. If the mother is going to be in danger of having the baby and then losing her own life, then he sees an exception to abortion in that case. And there are a lot of people, Christians included, who think that it is justifiable to have an abortion if the mother's life is in danger. So how do we think through these things? Well, I have another debate I have another video or talk on abortion. And my position, there are various views, even among Christians, there are various views about what it means to be a person, or when we should cut off the point at which an abortion is justified. What are some of the issues? Well, the main issue here really is of personhood. The issue here is of person. There's really not a debate about whether or not we have a new biological life at the moment of conception. At the moment of conception, where we have the egg and sperm uniting and forming the zygote, there is no real debate that there is a new biological life. The debate really is, when does personhood begin? Does it begin at conception? Does it begin at implantation? Does it begin at some kind of viability, detectable brainwaves, birth? And when does this happen? Well, we have seen a progression over the decades about abortion regarding, should it be legal? And of course, the main case was Roe v. Wade in 1973, which was overturned recently by the Supreme Court. And the question in the debate tonight was a lot about, well, how do you deal now with the issue of Roe v. Wade now that it's been tossed out by the Supreme Court? And surprisingly, Biden said he was going to reinstitute Roe v. Wade. I don't know how you can do that because it was thrown out as unconstitutional by the highest court in the land. But he did say he was going to do that. So, and Trump said that he thought that the right move was to put the issue back in the states. Well, now we have another issue of this debate is we have different states now saying different things about abortion and saying, well, what is the actual point at which an abortion is okay? You've got some, like my own state of Georgia says 6 weeks, and which is basically the heartbeat bill where you have a heartbeat. And as Biden said, you really don't even know you're pregnant sometimes until after that. And so there are a lot of people debating, well, that's not fair to the person who would otherwise get an abortion if she isn't even aware that she's pregnant until after the point at which she can have an abortion. So how can we as Christians think through this? This is probably the most hot topic button there is in terms of these debates of morality with the election coming up and just in general with our lives. One is, when do you think when do you think the actual person is a person? When does personhood begin? Well, I'm going to argue that personhood begins at conception, because at that point, that is the most radical point of development. There is no other agreed upon state. If you rule out a conception, there's no other obvious state of development that is as clear and radical as conception. At conception, you have, for a normal, healthy zygote, 46 chromosomes, 23 from each parent. You have human DNA, and then you just have the developmental stages of the zygote going through the different embryonic stages of progression and growing and developing brains and organs and that kind of thing. And there's a confusion here by people who want to argue that it's not a human yet because it hasn't developed enough. And so they want to say that this is a being that is developing into a human being. Whereas I would say, no, it's a developing human being. I don't think there is another stage at which we can say that as clearly that okay, right now, where it wasn't before, but it is right now, it's a human being. It's at the moment of conception, you have human DNA, you've got 46 chromosomes if it's a normal, healthy baby. And so that is the issue. Now, what about these exceptions? What about rape, incest, and the life of the mother? If there were an exception, I think it would probably be the life of the mother. This would probably be the only situation where I personally would think that there would be a justifiable abortion. I thought about this person. I think, oh, how would I feel? Somebody I knew and loved were raped and were forcibly underwent sexual experience and conceived. But I also have heard people in congressional hearings say, I was the product of rape. I was conceived in rape, and here I am, and I thank God my mother did not abort me. That person is still a human at the moment of conception, even though it was a horrible way to be conceived, and even though it was not a loving act that was meant to happen that way, doesn't change the status of the being in question at the zygotic stage at conception, still being a human being. And that would be the same for incest as well. So we have to think through this as Christians. Why do we hold our positions on things? Even if you don't agree with me, think through your own positions. Why do you hold your position on abortion that you do? There are a lot of people who hold a position, and then when you ask them, why do you hold that position? They really don't know. They were taught that by their parents. They heard it on social media or whatever, and they really don't have a good answer for why they hold to a position. So at least have your position, have it be thoughtful, thought out, think through the objections. I personally think that the issue on abortion is one where we have a person at the moment of conception, and that's going to be the biggest, probably moral issue of this election. What about other issues? Well, one is war. War was brought up several times in the debate about the nature of the military, about how people were killed. And Trump thought he killed these various terrorists. We talked about going into these various countries and having these different wars. Well, so the issue as Christians is, well, what do we think about war? And there are different views about war. Some are pacifists. Some think that when Jesus says regarding, being slapped on the cheek if you turn the other cheek, that really is talking more about being insulted, not being in a national crisis of emergency. God does not say war is never permissible. He actually commands war in the Old Testament in many places. Some will say, well, Jesus superseded that and there's no more war. Well, he never says there's no more war or there shouldn't be war. And so Christian theology has developed what's called a just war theory. And this is popularized by Augustine. And that is that there are certain criteria by which we should go to war. It has to be a justifiable reason. You can't just go in there because you want to. It's going to have limited objectives. It's got to be a last recourse. When you're in war, you can't fight non-combatants. You've got to have proportionality in terms of how you're fighting, and you've got to be fighting ultimately for peace. Another issue that came up in the debate, it wasn't a major issue in the debate, but it was climate. So how do we as Christians deal with the issue of climate change and the environment? Happen to be married to a woman who was very passionate about Christian ecology, clean water, clean air. And I do think it is an issue that Christians, and myself especially included, do not emphasize a lot. And a lot of times because it's triggering to us, because we associate, you hear a climate change and you think radical Green New Deal, you think leftist agenda, all the baggage that comes along with that. But there are genuine issues with ecology and Christian theology. I mean, we are told to be good stewards of the earth, to have dominion and to have the world subject to us, but also to take care of God's creation. So how do we do that as Christians? We have to think through that. And as we're looking through all these issues, what makes an action good or bad? It's not just enough to say, well, abortion is bad, this is bad, murder is bad and everything, rape is bad. We need to have the right position. But even beyond that, we need to be able to ask ourselves, what is it that makes an action good or bad? Now we're getting into moral philosophy and moral theology and what makes, something, the foundation that makes an action good or bad. We might say, well, rape is bad, abortion is bad. Well, what is meant by bad? Why does it cause? What is it that an action does that causes something to be bad? Throughout this whole debate, it really centered upon what does it mean as a president to serve the people? And it wasn't really said this way, but the whole debate was about how can we make everything better for the citizens of the United States? And so really what they were trying to say is, I'm better for your good. I'm going to put it that way, in kind of a natural law terms. I'm better for your good. They both were saying that if you want to be better off, then vote for me. So what does it mean to have this? What are they going? What does good mean here? What does it mean for us to be good? What are we striving at as humans regarding our earthly temporal citizenship as Christians and as human beings? What do you hold to that? What is it that makes something good, or what is our ultimate goal? And you got various positions on this. You've got divine command theory, you've got natural law, and the ultimate goal, and then these systems are ultimately in the theistic world, let's say Christian world, is to glorify God and to promote the goodness, the well-being, if you want to put it that way, and happiness of people. This is not a pure hedonism where nothing matters but you being happy, but as some have mentioned, it is a kind of a Christian hedonism. Again, where not pleasure itself or happiness itself is simply the end goal, but pleasure and happiness in God. So as Augustine said, to truly be happy is to be happy in God. There is an aspect of our end goal and result to be happy. It just means that from a Christian point of view, that happiness is ultimately within God. So when we're thinking through this, what does it mean to be good? What does it mean for a person to be good? This does ask or assume other philosophical and theological positions. I saw one person sent me a message on over text about a person on Twitter talking about this whole debate is assuming this particular philosophical view called nominalism, which is this idea where we don't have natures. So the good that I'm talking about it assumes a certain kind of view of the person, namely that we all share something in terms of like a human nature or human essence, something like that. So thinking through this, what actions are indeed moral, and then what issues are moral, and what makes them moral? We have to think through this as a church. If you're a pastor, a Sunday school teacher, a parent, and you want to teach your children these issues, we have to look at the underlying moral nature of these actions. And then, can the government do this? What is the role of government in terms of morality? You know, I've seen now 2 states, I believe I want to say Louisiana and Oklahoma, now saying that they're going to require Bible reading in the 10 Commandments, at least Bible reading for Oklahoma. Bible reading in Oklahoma and the 10 Commandments put in both schools, all schools in those 2 states. So what is the role of government and morality? Some will say the government shouldn't be legislating anything like morality, or it doesn't have that kind of role. And others are saying you can't help but legislate morality. And there's even a book on it, and it is called Legislating Morality by Norman Geisler and Frank Turek. The subtitle, Is It Wise? Is It Legal? Is It Possible? And so the argument here is that the laws the government writes and makes and passes just are inherently moral. You know, do not, and a lot of them track the 10 Commandments. You know, that murder is not just illegal, but there's something immoral about it. That there's not just something illegal about rape and other heinous acts, but that there's something inherently immoral with it. So these laws that are being passed by Congress, I don't think it's possible to pass these kinds of laws without any kind of morality associated with it. I will leave a link to this book in the description. So here's a little analysis about the debate and some things to think about during this election period. There's a lot going on here. So my suggestions as Christians: learn logic. I'm actually going to be teaching logic at 2 schools in the fall. Shameless plug. One for Apologia. Look up Apologia. I teach middle school and high school Latin, and I teach it at Southern Evangelical Seminary, a college course in critical thinking. But if you don't take my courses, do it yourself. You've got to learn logic. There's one discipline that will radically change your life. It is logic. Learn logic as Christians. Learn ethics and morality. Watch these debates. Read social media. Listen to these stories with a critical ear and a critical eye. And you have to learn logic to be able to do that. So a little analysis here, hopefully some food for thought during this election cycle. Thanks for tuning in. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.